Hello and welcome to the Yukon Entrepreneur Podcast Series. I'm your host, Carrie Johnston, and I'm recording today on the traditional territory of Champagne-Aniak First Nations in beautiful Dakwakata-Haines Junction. And please welcome my guest, Teena. Teena, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Teena Dickson. I am a lifelong Northern girl, and this will be my second podcast. So I appreciate having me back today and hopefully share some more insight on our last year or so of living in the Yukon.
Yeah, well, the first interview we did with you, it was springtime and you were kind of getting ready for reconfiguring for, what was it, summer 2020, and what a summer that turned out to be.
Yeah, that seems so long ago. But you kind of have lost track. So we just keep moving forward.
I hear you. Teena, what businesses are you in? How long have you been operating?
Well, we run, it feels like I run a lot more than what I do, but tourism is of course, our main industry. We have a couple different companies, kind of focus on tours and transport, and then we have a multi-day higher end company. So I bounce between both of them in terms of basically operations, marketing, logistics, guiding. Have become kind of known as the people mover and the Yukon ambassador. Yes, I'm always advocating for anything to do with factual information and good storytelling about the Yukon.
Well, and you run incredible businesses. Thank you, Teena. Teena, what's your first memory of the pandemic? When did you realize that this was going to be a thing and a problem?
Well, and I think I appreciate that question because we as in tourism, direct related, we were just getting ready to host Arctic Winter Games, which was is a huge sport tourism sector event, and that caused a lot of turmoil in terms of cancellations. We were booked throughout the games to host several opportunities with great revenue, and when the games announced that they're not happening, it was a very domino effect, not just for myself. I don't ever think of myself. I think of accommodations. I think of airlines. I think everything to do. There's tourism weaves throughout the Yukon deeply. And so that was a real eye opener. And then the second, it was really hard to just answer that one. And then the second was when cancellations started happening and all you were doing was handing back money. And that money, that was just like, wow, okay. And then the phone stopped ringing. There was no phone calls, no texts, no emails, complete dead. That was the real true reality because people were actually talking to me. I'm always on the phone. I mean, you average an incoming every usually 35 seconds to a minute. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing.
Yeah. So
it kind of felt like our own 9/11 here almost, because I remember that day as well. Yeah, the world stopped.
Yeah. Your world stopped in tourism.
Yep. What
have you learned about your business model over the past 2 years?
I think, a couple things. You really test your values in your model, and know, you revisit who you are and you stick to those. And a lot of that is, for me, it's community based. It's the community who sells us, who we turn to, who we partner with, and who support you. And so that really, really, really showed through that time that, okay, I'm a Yukon business, 100% local, and that is why we survived.
And who is your customer? Is it Yukoners, Canadians, international? Do you have like a demographic that you're reaching for?
Well, of course that kind of changed, but locals, people live here to do their own thing. So they didn't really need us because people just pack up and they go. They don't need transport. They don't need someone to hold their hand going for a hike. So we didn't benefit hugely, but there is still, and even though events were canceled, so that was always my spin-off. Okay, we got weddings, we have things. So I sat for a little bit, and it made me kind of, I guess I was supposed to have some chill time, and anyone that knows me, I don't sit for very long. So yeah, the vans got parked, staff got laid off a bit, but we were still, but for a shorter amount of time than compared to a lot of other tour companies, because small groups were still having to move around. We still had some corporate business. We work some government business, and some NGOs that still needed our help in moving people safely and following, some COVID guidelines, which I know we'll talk about in a bit. So, and finding those opportunities where you didn't really see, but people know that you were kind of hurting and there was no white vans and nothing happening. So I think people created some opportunity for you as well. So I appreciate that.
As a business owner, leadership is inherent in so much of what we do. What are you learning about leadership over the past couple of years?
Well, what we're pretty chatty. We're as a leaders communicating, but that was your time to use that other skill called listening and taking a step back and going through another lens. So I maybe call it the leadership lens, because we heard and we saw things, and finding that opportunity by listening to what's going on out there and planning for the future. It was either, you can just curl up, go away and decide to crawl under a rock, or that was your chance as a leader to be and to be someone, maybe for someone else. Like, I took more time out to speak to potential entrepreneurs, to students, to other courses, and usually people don't get a half hour of my time at all. And I took more time to talk to the community, talk to students, and participate in like studies internationally. And I know you asked about who our audience is. Well, I mean, definitely on that front, from a training, it was local. And then, when we captured Canada, I mean, Yukon was on everyone's list in the rest of Canada. So later on in the pandemic, the domestic market became one of our strongholds, and we knew that the international market would come back, and it is. So, but finally, Canadians were coming up here, and with a bit more space and a bit more, they had more room in the tour buses. They got to chit chat with us a little bit more, and not so much international mixed with domestic. So we really got to focus on our Canadian visitor.
We've all had to adapt to this new way of normal. Which sort of adaptation in your business are you most proud of?
I just say we survived. I didn't have to sell off any assets. I mean, laying off staff is never an easy thing. I still had payroll, and so little things like that, you're pretty proud of, that you were still actually providing some employment for people, which is a good thing. And I think finding, kind of reinvesting in the community and building some new partnerships is probably where I'm most proud of, that we were still able to meet supply and demand and still say yes. And I'm actually learning to say no a bit more, because just with capacity right now, but also and I don't know if I'm proud of this, but this is definitely a change. I used to be a huge optimist. Anyone who knew me, I was always at 90,000 cloud foot elevation thinking, huge thinking. And the pandemic turned me into a realist. And I used to kind of point out realists. And now many of us in tourism have became that. And I know I will become an optimist again, but I have to just deal with being a little bit more of a realist. And that's kind of interesting. I catch myself a little bit going, oh man, yeah. So a little change.
That's really interesting. The public health measures have been, on and off, and in times more restrictive. Which have been the most challenging for you as a business owner?
Oh man, So we spent a lot of time in our vans, and I mean, they were clean before, but yeah, I am just the cleaning, the extra cleaning time that you have to incorporate. Someone has to absorb that cost, because when a van comes in, you're spending more time cleaning to make sure it's safe before it goes out. So that's definitely, and you know, people, I'm reminding people that we need to space out a little bit more. And you sound like just because, you know, you open the door and some people want to follow those guidelines. Here's the challenge: is they just got off an airplane. So they've already been on an airplane, they've been masked all day, and then they get into a van, and then it's, the guide saying again, you know, we need to wear masks and stuff. So I mean, that gets a little bit old, but also, yeah, you're much better at cleaning a van, a lot faster.
Have you accessed any of the pandemic related supports, the employee leave, special leave, or the pivot program, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think for myself, yes. And most tourism businesses, we were really lucky compared to the rest of the country with our industry to have, I'd say, more opportunities with some financial directly related to tourism. However, we did not go into business to fill out grant applications. I'm not an NGO, and it's not why I went into business. So we all got grant and financial fatigue and just said, screw it after a while. So there's missed opportunities. You really kind of read through the guidelines and went, okay, how much time do I actually have to do this? And yes, I'm going to get more money, but is it worth my sanity? About halfway through the pandemic, many of us were just like, really kind of going through and going, okay, what do I really need to take advantage of? And then the paper trail was enough to kill you. You know, you're dying already, but you really had to just put everything out there. And we're not really that kind of people to put everything out there to everyone. Yeah, government, open your books. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I think, and it has nothing to do with pride. It's time, because you were exhausted already and you're trying to just spin and then throw in a huge grant application, and accountability that you had to keep was so much more heavy. And it was another level of exhaustion. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we're fortunate, and I'm grateful for it. And I know I'll be able to chat about it probably a little bit more down the road, because we survived. So,
yeah. Going forward, how are you thinking about your business differently? Where do you see your opportunity?
Well, if you would have talked to me like, okay, so it's been, I think one of your beginning questions was how long? So 9 years for this division of the company, but I've been with the business for like 28 years. Of course, we're larger than life here, huge thinkers, opportunity, land of opportunity. Yeah, one time I wanted to be the biggest, largest tour company with, you know, of course, our various divisions, and offer, you know, our day tours to our multi-tours, to now kind of moving into more transport, host services. I'm going to probably still be a boutique tour company. We have found a very nice niche market, and we seem to have found a really great place. And yeah, you don't have to be the biggest, greatest. And I don't want Yukon to be that. One of your things that you're going to ask me down the road about aha moments and things like that is, what's going to happen now is this word called over tourism. We have all been cooped up for so long. Travel it's a privilege, but it's also a necessity, and is becoming a need for people's mental wellness, for people. I think people are going to value their families. They've had time to reflect, and now they need to get the frick out. And so people are going to be anxious to book travel. Companies are changing, and I worry about our capacity, because so much of our industry is understaffed right now. And it's not just me, I'm talking hotels, restaurant, anyone is understaffed. And so there's a potential for burnout, but there's also an opportunity to look and go, who do we really want to be when we grow up post-pandemic? And like, for example, Kluane, I don't want it to be Banff. I never want it to be Banff. And anyone that knows me will speak. I protect that place with my heart, because I never want to see 5-10 buses pulling in and just ruining that Yukon experience. So with this pandemic, we have an opportunity to become a really cool model for responsible tourism. And that's important. Yeah.
Have you taken up any new skills to better position yourself for the new economy?
Oh, skills. No, I maybe a little better at relationships. My skills, I'm using skills that maybe were in my, they're somewhere in your tool belt, but we all created new tool belts, right, during the pandemic. And so some of my funny ones that I thought of was like more, I'm more understanding, I'm more nice, I'm more patient. I have maybe some skills of a social worker, and not just a strong type A guide storyteller. So I have a bit more compassion for people. I've become more flexible and a good listener, because people who have jumped in the van, I really try to stay away from politics, government, religion, steer it. And now we have this thing called COVID and pandemic, and people are at the holidays. So I have to work really hard on just hear their story and then, okay, we're moving on. Yeah. So yeah, there's some new skills there on getting people out of that think tank and enjoying their holiday again. So I know that those skills still have to probably develop a little bit more.
Well, it's interesting. So people are leaving down south, coming up here to get away, and they're still bringing all that COVID baggage up there with them. You got to help peel it away.
Yeah, and I think, I'm seeing is people are the traveler, for example. What I'm noticing is they're much more emotional, they're much more needy, they're anxious, and they're bringing that into their itinerary planning, and so it's taking more time. It's taking more time to really understand, what do these people need when they come here? We used to be able to just go, oh yeah, you should be doing this, but now it's like, yeah, there's another layer to make sure that they're doing the right thing, and that we're gonna be there on the other end for them. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. We've got this work, and you've spoken to this a little bit, but we've got this work ahead of sort of rebuilding post-pandemic the Yukon economy and sort of what we want to be. What are you paying attention to? What are your hopes?
Well, I just think we recover, that tourism becomes another forefront for Yukon is a pretty sexy, hot place, in terms of we have all the components to be on the front runner. Right now, I think we're number 5 in Canada as a destination for Canadians to travel to. Like, and of course, we want to be number 1, but at the same time, just moving up that ladder and recognizing that, yeah, spread ourselves out, still build on the year-round tourism, our winter market, support potential, companies that started out and then kind of are in the hold tank. I also really advise I'm always talking about, we talked so much about emerging entrepreneurs right now with the pandemic and what people should be doing. And so I really advocate for that with, to not be the super company that you're going to try and do it all, and really understand who you are and your market, and not copy. Don't be a copycat, be yourself and be who you are, because the companies that have survived and are moving forward, we're all in it together, and Yukon's always been that way, to help each other out, and I saw that more than ever. when we might have not been able to deliver, so neither of another company. So we've built some new relationships there as well, which I'm kind of really glad about. So partnerships is really key in moving forward. Everyone should have that potential partnership list.
Any advice for emerging entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I kind of touched on that. I think they really need to have a diverse business model, really understand, and don't rely on funding. If you're part of your building a business is to have public dollars and funding, and that you're not going to make it. You really, I don't care if you start with one horse, one bicycle, one room. You really need to understand the financial picture of it and have those support team in place and be prepared now more than ever, I think, to even work harder with this recovering industry.
Any aha moments, shifts in your worldview?
I think, we end up, I talked about it, that travel is going to be more of a necessity. And one thing that, my aha moments, you had more time to reflect during the pandemic. Yes, you did more things. And I know we'll talk about a little bit about what I did for wellness during that time. But one of my aha moments was that people really don't understand our tourism and industry. Like, I was so surprised. I had so many aha moments where people are like, the whole world is shut down. There's no planes flying. There's no one cruising around. And they're like, so how's it going? And I'm just like, well, actually, yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, no, revenues are down 97%. Like we're not moving. Have you seen any of my vans? Have you seen any visitors? And they're like, oh yeah, you guys are, I forgot about that. Yeah, you guys would be really impacted, right? And I'm just like, wow, yeah. And it surprised me more. And then people coming up with just like outrageous, I know they're trying to be kind, but really outrageous ideas when I'm just like, okay, yeah. So you take the words of advice and you're just like, haha, okay, thanks. Because this is the Yukon's very government, very stable. There's a lot of dollars floating around, and I just yeah, the industries. And it's not that we want pity or anything, but oh my, yeah, I couldn't believe some of the comments, and I was just like, okay, yeah, we need to move on to another conversation now. Those were aha moments for me, where I was like, oh, okay, I need to go for a longer walk. Yeah.
So when you went for walks, what else kept you well and grounded?
Oh yeah, kind of, I think, yeah, really rediscovering your backyard and what an amazing place we live, and how, I still went and traveled a little bit. I'll totally admit that. And, and just being responsible as well. Yeah, definitely, the family time. Yeah, hey, we live in a beautiful place, and we can get away from the masks and get away from all that stuff quite easily here. So that kind of really kept you grounded as well. Yeah, and friends and family and just taking more time. So, I mean, even though we were in a fortunate spot, thank God our kids are older and the mortgage was paid, to just kind of go, okay, yeah, no, do a little bit more projects. And one of the projects I actually did was I started writing a book during COVID. So, and I've always had that kind of further on in my career, but I actually started writing a book, and I already have like a second book that I started adding words into. So I actually have 2 books going. Yeah. And I have a whole plan for that. So yeah.
That's amazing. What are the books about?
One is actually kind of so visitor experiences in the Yukon, and of course I haven't came up with a title, but we have a story to tell, but usually the visitor story is much better on why they come here, and heartfelt stories to terminal illness, to those surprise proposals, to people's crazy and unbelievable reason why they want to come here. And then the unexpected things that happen on tours that you just go, oh yeah. So a great read, you know, a little bit more, but really through our lens and through my window, I guess. And then the other book is about more specific to our other industry that we work in, with the outfitting industry, and client experiences, but it's a learning book through funny stories that have happened in various, they come here for a big trip, just like paddlers do, fishing people come here for these amazing experiences. But there's a lot of packing and life lessons about when you're going to travel to the Yukon, and really what you need to know and what to expect. And then, yeah, and that's the book I want to go like on tour with, you know, down to some of our specific trade shows, and do some it's a great segue into, yeah, the Yukon backcountry and who we attract and the crazy things that happen here. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's another whole podcast. Yeah,
that is, yeah. And there's you know, when I worked in the outfitting industry, my favorite thing was to actually read those books about other outfits and other trips, and like it was always that really, I always found it so fascinating, especially going back historically, to read those older books about, you know, trails, guide trails, or whatever they were called. They're great books.
You know, and you know, it goes right from the you know, people work so hard just to get here, but then I love digging through like people's duffel bags before they fly in to a remote place because they're overweight. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's open the duffel. What do you got in there? Yeah, you're 20 pounds over. You know, to being at the float plane, to the journey before the journey begins. And that is where there's a lot of like just blooper moments. Yeah. Yeah, and so whenever I come across a visitor or something, an experience that just happened, I'm like, oh man, yeah, you are now in my book. Yeah. And so by the end of the trip, when someone does something kind of funny or scary, they're like, oh geez, am I going to be in your book? That was not very good, was it? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have a special place for you. Mm-hmm.
Your chapter 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts before we leave the interview today, Teena?
Well, you know, you definitely through this process, you got to see, I always say it's like a little bit, because I do have a competitive side, you know, it is survival of the fittest, number one. There's opportunity, always. Things like this happen, and what it is the reset, and it creates opportunity. And it just tells you that, you know, how in, you know, living life and travel, and you just hear more and more people's stories of, you know, wanting the need to travel, and it's not, you know, it's part of the process, it's the part of the journey. It's not the end all, you know, just to live. I always say, you know, people who great things always come when you live outside of your comfort zone. So a lot of people were challenged with their comfort zones over these last 2 years. So there is amazing things that can happen if you kind of see it through that lens, and you got to keep diverting, because you ran into a lot of people who struggled, who are vulnerable, through, you saw it in social media, you saw it when you saw them on the street. And yeah, we need to lift those people up, but at the same time, you need to filter it. And that means limiting your time on news, limiting your time on social media. I think a lot of us step back, but at the same time, it's like, and not taking, you know, people are taking sides, and it really tested things. And the bottom line is, through this thing, is to live life, travel, go be what you want to be. And the bottom line, and also never ever travel with anyone you don't love, because especially in times like this where we're testing with all the safety and things and like that, and you really have found out who you love and where you should go, and what you should do. And travel is always the best way. So tourism has a whole bunch of little messages entwined there. If people think that they should travel or not, but yeah, definitely get out there. It's time.
Well, thanks so much for your time today, Teena. Best of luck.
Perfect. Thank you so much.